Welcome to God Friday Discussions. As we embark on this journey together, it's important to acknowledge the diversity of thoughts, beliefs, and experiences that each of us brings to the table. Our discussions are rooted in a spirit of exploration, learning, and mutual respect. The views expressed are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of open dialogue and personal reflection. Please note, we recognize and honor the freedom of personal belief. This platform does not advocate for any singular viewpoint as the absolute authority on spiritual matters. Our discussions are intended as a safe space for sharing and growth. We encourage you to approach each session with an open heart and mind, but also respect your personal boundaries. If at any point you would find the content not to your liking or comfort, you are free to disengage as you see fit. While we seek to provide enriching content, participation is entirely voluntary. We assume no responsibility for any personal decisions or interpretations made in response to our discussions. Our aim is to foster a community where curiosity, faith, and understanding can flourish. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And for this week's topic, we're doing charity. So, Matt, want to kick it off here?
Yeah, no problem, man. So yeah, when we were deciding a topic here, it was between prayer and charity, and I believe your brother was the one that came up with charity. And I started doing my little thing like I do, doing a little research and all of that. So um, the direction kind of went a little different, and it was kind of directed towards some of the men in one of my groups. So it may seem, I just get into it. So yeah, the First Corinthians chapter 13 verse 3, right? So it says, "If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do I not have love, I gain nothing." So, I mean, if I give everything, and I even give my sacrifice myself as a martyr, it means nothing if there was no love involved with it, is what Paul the Apostle is saying. So Paul the Apostle is writing a letter to the people of Corinth, basically telling them kind of they're jacked up, right? So what's the context of this verse is Paul explains the necessity of love. He argues about spiritual gifts, eloquence, knowledge, faith, charity, and even martyrdom are meaningless without love, right? So Paul defines love, describing its attributes as it's in there. Love is patient, love is kind. I think we've had numerous talks on this, and me and Raj don't see eye to eye in love, and we're not going to get into that discussion, though. But he says it's not proud, not self-seeking, not easily angered, keeps no record, right? So the sacrificial acts without love, Paul emphasizes that the most extreme acts of charity and self-sacrifice are invalid if there's no love involved with it, man. And just emphasize it, the intent of what it is that you're doing. And we've had numerous conversations on this about how there's YouTube channels even dedicated to, hey, look, I'm giving all this money to charity. I'm giving this money to the homeless. I mean, biblically, it tells you it means nothing. Like, you don't get a reward in heaven because of that. Like, you got your reward here on earth. So, the emphasis on love, we just can't describe how important it is. If what you're doing, there's no love in it, it means nothing. So, I guess, how do we steward this? Charity in general, how do we steward it? So, your motivation matters, right? Exactly what is your intent? Are you expecting a favor in return when you're giving? Hey, look, I took care of you for 5 years. What are you gonna do for me now? No, 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 no. Nobody's indebted to you. You did that out of love, right? And that's it. So there's another verse, Bible, about charity, but it's 4 verses here. So Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. It says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward in heaven. So there explains that very clearly. Like if you're looking to say, hey, look how great I am, everybody. I gave millions of dollars to the whatever organization of your choice. God's not smiling at you. So it also says this. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues. So he's kind of talking about the Pharisees, and these are the words of Jesus, actually, right? So, the people were saying, do not give it like the synagogues do on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they haven't received their reward in full. So they got their reward here on earth, because everybody said, "Oh, look, they're giving, they're giving to the needy." But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So you can ponder on that for a minute, I guess, because when you're giving, he's essentially saying you're supposed to do it without telling the soul. And God sees you, right? And God's proud of you, because I guess if you even tell somebody, it almost sounds like you lost your reward. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense. And then I kind of took it to a different dimension here. So in Proverbs verse 22, or chapter 22, verses 9, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. And that's one thing that was kind of directed towards a lot of people that I know. Like how important is it for like charity? I think one of the worst things you can do is be greedy with food personally. Like Jehovah Jireh, God provides, right? If you have food in your house and somebody comes to your house and you don't offer them food, I think that's, personally, in my opinion, that's really ugly. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think it's really ugly. Like, if you have a piece of bread, if you have something, offer them, And here's multiple examples. So this verse begins by highlighting, generosity. Those who are generous, especially with their resources, are promised blessings in return. So this aligns with biblical principle. For those who give freely with a good heart will receive blessings from God. And I can tell you my personal experience, no matter how bad like my situations have been, like in our household, if you come to our house, you will eat good. So Raj, Desiree, if you guys are ever in Chicago, I promise you, if you guys come to our house, your families, whatever, you guys will eat like kings and queens. And
I'll pick you up on that.
we
like
eat
the
really
sound of
good.
that.
We're good cooks. So the blessings can be understood by both material and like spiritual, right? So generous individuals often experience a sense of fulfillment and peace. Emphasis on peace. And I can't tell you enough peace, because I see so many people that are greedy with something as simple as like food. And they're always struggling and they're always in chaos. And I'm not saying I don't struggle, but in our house we have peace. And people can sense it when they come. Like most people, when they come to our house, they don't knock on the door. They open the door and walk in. And that's just the kind of environment we created, right? So the specific act mentioned here is sharing food with the poor, right? The act of charity is a tangible expression of generosity and compassion. So it reflects like you caring about the less fortunate, because some people, like just say on a holiday, Thanksgiving, even Christmas, a lot of people don't have places to go, right? And I was one of them for a little bit, and it kind of sucked. That's when the bachelor life sucked. Am I right, Raj? Raj, look, he got that look like he's about to cry, man.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I know, man.
I
The
always got my
bachelor life.
my family. Luckily, I appreciate that. Yeah.
But no, that's good. No, I didn't have like even family like that. Like, it was
Yeah.
like bachelor life had real high highs and real low lows. So, on holidays and things like that, it's important to bring people who are less fortunate, don't have a family even to spend time with. Hey, come spend time with us, right? So providing food to people like addresses a basic human need, right? It's a direct way. It's a direct way to, uh, I guess I want to just say, show compassion. So what I want to lead into is like about hospitable charity, and hospitable charity in biblical times, hospitable charity was highly regarded. It was a virtue. Offering food and shelter to guests, including strangers, was seen as a sacred duty. This practice was like an understanding that people made, kind of like emulating God, essentially. So there's stories throughout the Bible about people, let's just say Abraham and Sarah, offering hospitality to three, what the Hebrew text calls them, as divine messengers, and I believe that kind of coincides with the Muslim understanding of it as well. And Christians, they call them angels, but they're just divine messengers, we'll call them for argument's sake, right? So how Abraham and Sarah were living uh, somewhere anyway, and three messengers came, and Abraham saw them, and he fetched water and washed their feet. Like, he's like, hey, here's some water, I'll wash your feet, right? So as a result, he asked Sarah, hey, can you make us some bread? And then selected a calf, and then killed the calf, and then he served them like food and meat. Which were kind of complete strangers. So while they ate, the visitors asked about Sarah, and one of the promises they made is that Sarah would have uh, a son within the next year, which is Isaac, right? So Sarah would have a son within the next year, which happened. So because they were hospitable to people, God rewarded them essentially, right? Something like that. So the story, it just represents how important hospitality was, especially like in ancient Eastern culture, because too often we look at Christianity from a Western lens, and I've said it over and over: Christianity is not a Western religion; it's an Eastern religion, and the traditions of sharing a meal is a significant act that goes beyond sustenance. Sorry, I can't talk today. So it represents friendship, fellowship, unity, breaking down barriers, essentially. So, I mean, the Last Supper, Jesus shared a meal with his uh, disciples, right? And then there was another story about the widow of Zarephath. I can't say the name. So, upon arriving to Zarephath, Elijah, who was one of the prophets, encountered a widow gathering sticks. He asked her for a drink of water and a piece of bread. The widow explained that she only had a handful of flour and a little oil, and enough for one last meal for herself and her son before they would die of hunger. So Elijah reassured her not to be afraid and asked her to make a small loaf of bread for him and then prepare something for herself and her son. He promised her flour wouldn't run out, and it didn't. Like all throughout the drought, she had food the whole time. And this was like the last food that she had, and she still gave it to him, like willingly, maybe willingly. I don't know. Maybe the text doesn't depict that necessarily, but like nonetheless, she did it, and she didn't go hungry. You know what I mean? She was blessed as a result. So those are just like testimonies, and I can give you like testimony of my life in general. It's just I have countless stories just like that. So I guess to just say, how do you apply this? So believers are encouraged to practice hospitality by welcoming others into their house, breaking bread, sharing meals. Breaking bread was one of the most intimate things you could do with people in ancient times, I guess we could call it. So breaking bread was like, I think, the second most intimate thing you could do with somebody next to sex, essentially. Like that's how much it meant. Like eating with someone, like so by promoting a spirit of hospitality, we could break down barriers essentially. So I guess in conclusion, I just break it down. We're called to be charitable, giving willingly and in secret. That's the key, right? So if you come to my house, Raj, and I'm like, hey, Raj, I'm gonna feed you good, and I go on Twitter the next day, hey, I hook Raj up with some enchiladas and some, all this other food and everything. I mean, what reward did I get? Like I'm supposed to be giving in secret. I'm not supposed to be bragging about being hospitable. Uh, so we're meant to be hospitable, generous, and intentional in our actions. When we give, we should do it with integrity, purpose, reflecting like Christ, I guess, who led by example. So while he was giving everything, his life, people were spitting in his face, and he wasn't um, like, hey, fuck these people. You know what I mean? He was like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Right? Even in that moment, he was thinking about their well-being, not even his. You know what I mean? That's the ultimate sacrifice. So, uh, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, man. What I came up with as a presentation, and it's just the intent of what you do is so important, not the action. And I think we've emphasized on this in the last few podcasts that we've done. Like, if you're doing something and the intent is not right, it means nothing. You know, that's kind of just giving me confirmation on all that we've been talking about. Is it's lining up, right? So
So
yeah,
when
that's kind
you
of what I presented today, man.
thank you, Matt. Yeah, no, very I like how you went through some scripture verses. Maybe we can even like get into analyzing it a little bit. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to ask about like maybe an example. Not that and not for bragging purposes, more for analyzing purposes. So like when say maybe the last time you gave to charity, what was your intention with that? And like, how do you kind of go through the process of giving to charity? And I can give an example too. Like, one thing was the CHP, California Highway Patrol. They send out these letters asking for donations. And usually I'm not like super into like giving to those like mail things, but I went to like I was at this dinner and they were talking about how uh a lot of officers they actually have to like they do a weird thing where they don't live in the area. They actually come from like Reno or like somewhere relatively far and then they stay at like they'll rent like a motel or something like indefinitely and they'll just rotate people through there. So when they work, they have a place to stay. And I thought that was kind of crazy, honestly. And I don't know, it's just kind of, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So um, it kind of led me to be like, okay, you know what, maybe I should do some donation thing for CHP. And my process in it isn't really uh like sometimes when I give away money, it can be a little I can have a a, a good amount of resistance with that because I'm like, bro, I don't have all that much money to give right now. But I try and flip that and I try and maybe I'm not fully successful, but like what I try and do is just be as grateful as possible that I have a little bit of extra money to give and that I do like because I can afford to give this money. It doesn't like sure there's that resistance like oh I can't be giving away money but like there's also I try and push an element of gratitude on that. So I'm like, well, actually I can and thank you God for giving me what I do have to be able to give to CHP or whatever it is. So that's kind of like one of the things I try and do when I'm giving donations like that, at least.
Well, I guess charity is not necessarily just giving to charity, right? Um, it could be helping somebody when they need help, you know,
Yeah, yeah, no, totally.
and doing it in doing it without expecting anything in return. Um, that's the true form of charity, I would think, man. Uh, Giving with the intention of feeling good about giving and helping somebody. So, like for myself, for example, I mean, I could probably get. I should have invited a few people on here. I could probably get a few people to come in and give their own testimonies of when they come and just how we are here. Even when we don't have it, like we still give. I don't know if that makes sense, but we don't have, we still give. And as a result, like I've never, I've never been unemployed. I've never been late on a, mortgage payment. Never been, uh, you know what I mean? Like everything we've always had what we need, in spite of not having anything to give others, and we still give. If that makes sense to you. So I guess I'm kind of being ambiguous, a little bit maybe, right? But yeah, I would say that charity isn't limited to organizations. It could be to family. It could be to friends. It could be to strangers. Just something recently, my wife was telling me, and this always happens to her, but it never happens to me. I don't get it, man. Maybe God's like, he's looking at me like, I don't know. Um, this wedding for my sister-in-law has been overwhelming. It's been really, really busy, expensive nonetheless. And I was like, okay, don't worry about it, man. We'll figure it out one way or another, right? So my wife tells me she was going to the store. She was paying for the groceries, and then just some random person paid for her groceries.
Wow.
So things like that happen to you when you're not selfish. And I think personally, one of the most things you could be selfish with is like food. If you have food and somebody comes to your house, you offer them food. Now, if they don't take it, that's fine. But in our house, man, if you don't take it, it's offensive. I'm not gonna lie to you. We're like, whoop his ass, man. We're gonna shove the food down his throat, whatever. You know what I mean? But
Let me
yeah,
go get my
most
gun real
people they
fast.
they like most people they like how we cook and everything, so they don't have a problem with accepting the food, and everybody wants to eat over and over, which is cool, man. But yeah, I think it's not necessarily like an eye for an eye. Like, hey, I'm gonna give somebody food, and God's gonna give me food. You have no idea. You'd be blessed somehow. You don't even know. Like, I could be, uh, you know, we have a few people at the house, and I order food for everybody at the house, right? Online, it gets delivered, and then all of a sudden, 6 people show up. Well, there's not enough for 6 people. What do? You still offer them food, right? And it just reminds me of when Jesus turned the 5 loaves of bread, or the five, 3 loaves of bread and 5 fish, and fed like 3,000 people. They said it just kept coming. And I'm not saying that I saw food multiply, but we all got full, and you know, uh, nobody went hungry that day, despite us not even having had ordered enough for that amount of people, right? So yeah, like it's not always like miraculous, but out of the blue, something could, some opportunity, something could happen to you. I think as a result, we have a lot of peace in our house. Um, I see a lot of people. Well, I don't have enough to. Listen, you can't afford not to be charitable, in my opinion. So no matter what your financial circumstance, no matter your um, wherever you're at that moment in life, like if you have something, offer it to somebody, and Jehovah Jireh, God will provide, right? Like you have to have faith in His provision. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think like even when you have even less, like when you give more, when you have less, it even shows more faith in God or whatever. So yeah, like if you have a lot and you give a little, like maybe it's not even as valuable as like the person who doesn't have anything giving to someone else, because that really shows
Well,
faith in my mind.
the, yeah, there's a verse that talks about something specifically about that. Can't name it off the top of my head. I'm not that good. But a woman, there was a woman. There was people giving charity, and a woman gave like what I guess would be like, like 10 cents or something, But that was everything she had, and she gave it freely. And it seems, from my experience, and even I could even say this with myself, the more you acquire, the more you are resistant to give. And I could say I struggle with that too. Like the more you have, the more you're. I think it takes you like further away from God, essentially. Like if you have a big fancy house, which I don't have a big fancy house. My house is a normal house, uh, but I see people with close to $1 million houses that drive $100,000 vehicles that won't won't give $5 to somebody because they have their justification for it, right? And those people, I wish you could hear these people. Like they complain about their life, like they live in a, like I said, like close to $1 million house, and they're complaining how the outlets are in the house and how stupid this house is and how much of a shithole the house is as a result. And well, I don't think it's a shithole. We should go take you to like third world Africa and really let you see how people live in poverty. But yeah, it's just in my experience what I see. The more asset, the more stuff you acquire, I think the further it can take you away from God.
So, what's your like what intentions do you put behind charity when you do charity? Like, can you lay them out for us, maybe?
For myself, I really do. I get like a personal satisfaction of like when people come over. It's like a pride thing. For me, maybe the intention is bad. I don't know, but for me, it's like, man, I did that. Like I like I'm able to do that. Like take care of people when they come here. Everybody eats, and a lot of people just try to show up all the time. Hey, what are you doing today? We're not home. Oh, I see your cars are outside. But yeah, like for me, I think I just
I'm
get like
starving.
I, I get like a personal. I do. I feel a sense of accomplishment. I guess that I was able to provide. And I guess it's not me that's providing; it's actually God that's providing. But I was able to facilitate that uh, transaction. I guess.
How about you, Des?
Matt,
What
I really like that you put it that way. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Now go ahead,
um,
Desiree.
I was just so what you just said, Matt. I really love that. You said that it's not you providing it, but you're like the facilitator. Sorry, my daughter is wanting to talk. So what I hear all the time in Islam, if one person does something for another and the person thanks them, which of course you should do, that's etiquette. The other person always responds, that was already yours. It wasn't mine to give, really. It was from Allah. So that was from God. That was your provision that was already written for you from the beginning.
Mm.
So it's like, of course, it's etiquette to thank somebody, but you're always supposed to remind that person where it's coming from, So in a way, you're helping them remember that anything that comes to them, no matter where it comes from, it's all coming from God. So I think it's so cool that you said that. As soon as you said that, it immediately made me think of that. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I, you touched on something that reminded me of something too, because like myself, I'm a very proud man, um, and it's probably hindering other people's blessings by me not accepting charity sometimes, because like I'm very very proud in that, I guess, that area where I don't know, maybe I was
What
so
is this,
broken I
charity?
couldn't
Get
even
out of
accept it.
here. Is
Nah,
that you?
I don't need your
He's
money.
like
I
that
don't need your
sometimes.
money. I don't need your money. Get out of here. Nah, I was even not even just charity to an extent. Um, I think I was so broken I couldn't even receive a compliment from somebody. Like somebody would compliment you, and I'm already thinking like, what are your intentions behind this? Like, you know, or I'm thinking there's sarcasm or there's it's not genuine, you know. Like, and as a result of me being that way, I couldn't even pay forward a compliment because I'm like, why you need a compliment? Well, and I'm just being real. What are you, a little bitch ass little crybaby? You need a compliment, like, and now like I could be hindering somebody from their blessing by not allowing them to bless me. And sometimes I'm even like in a position that I don't like somebody gave me like $1,000 one time, and I didn't, I don't know, I don't want it, like, I don't need it, or maybe we did need it, I don't know. And that's what I'm just saying. I was just so, I couldn't even, I can't even allow myself to receive the charity from somebody. But if Abraham is sitting here and he's having dinner with God's messengers, his angels, and they're able to receive it, and they're like a divine entity, and I'm just a human being, why can I receive? This is interesting, man, that we're having this conversation, because I just had this conversation with my mother-in-law. She says, why don't you allow people to bless you? You know? So, yeah, yeah, that's kind of where I've been at for like probably 39 and uh, 11 months of my life, 39 years and 11 months of my life. That I would not accept anything from anybody because what are they going to expect in the future? Oh, well, I'm going to owe them now, like, so yeah.
Yeah.
So there's two things. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go,
I'm
Des.
sorry, Ross.
No, go ahead.
So there's two things that you mentioned that are that I wanted to respond to, Matt. So, um, first, so one thing that really stuck out is you are talking about how sometimes you would have that thought, what does this person want in return? What are they going to ask me for later? And that's a key component of giving proper charity in Islam, is that you don't follow up charity with injurious words. So there's I can't remember exactly. um, okay, I found it. It says kind speech and forgiveness are better than charity followed by injury. So and that speaks directly to those people who tend to give something to other people or do something nice for somebody, and then later on they'll remind them of that. So they'll say, hey, don't you remember all of the things I've done for you, and now you can't show up for me, or um, hey, I'm going to call in that favor. So I mean, that automatically makes it not charity, and people do
Wow.
that. So I understand when people have that fear, because that's a very human thing to do, such that God feels the need to tell us about how we shouldn't do that. you know? And the other thing, oh, I think I forgot what else I was going to say. Oh my goodness. Um, Maybe it'll come back to me. But that
No,
part especially, like I wanted to mention that because your fear isn't too far off, you know. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. So what's your you said I think you said it was your mother-in-law that asked you why don't you let people bless you? Is that what you said?
yep.
So from my perspective, I've had problems with that too in the past. And from my personal perspective, I just try and think of it like since that's really not coming from that person, it's coming from God. Are you really gonna, and this is me talking to myself, are you really going to look at this gift that's coming from God and say, no, thank you? I don't deserve this. I know better than you, and this really shouldn't be for me. You know what I mean? Um, so that's kind of how I try and like look at it myself, and it kind of helps soften my heart towards receiving those things through other people.
Yeah. There's also probably a level of discernment we need to like convey when we're doing this. So,
Oh yeah.
sometimes you could tell when somebody's intentions. I mean, I can tell sometimes when somebody's intentions. When they want to give you something, nah, they're expecting something way more. They're expecting something in return. This isn't a free thing they're giving you. This isn't a charitable act. This is an act that you're not. Are you willing to pay what it costs later? And then 90, probably I would say most oftentimes than not, when it's like a stranger doing it for you, that's when it's usually like God. When we were on vacation last year, we drove to Tennessee from here. So they got the mountains, they got like little cabins and stuff over there. And my car broke down. You guys ever seen that movie National Lampoon's Vacation?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah, that was my vacation. I could totally relate to Clark Griswold. Um, so car broke down, just disaster, right? And we're sitting there in the hotel, and I find out like I essentially they're telling me I got to get a whole new engine for my car, and I'm like, oh my god, what are we gonna do here? So we're sitting there in the night. I mean, we were sitting there in a nice hotel on vacation. We're like, all right, man, I'm not gonna stress about it, whatever. And I was still stressing about it. And this guy starts talking to me, and he's telling us a story. And I was like, yeah, the car broke down. And he's like, oh, okay, blah blah blah. And then he said something. I was like, man, I said one day somebody is gonna like look at me and they're gonna be like, hey, man, you're cool. Here's $5 million or something like that. And I was just making a joke, right? Because I always make little jokes like that. And when I don't know, we were talking back and forth, just going back and forth. I didn't realize this guy was actually a pastor, and he ended up like handing me money like privately, and here it's not $5 million, he said, but it's something like. So in that moment, I didn't even want to accept it. Still, like I'm like, but my wife told me, man, that's God telling him, so take it. What's wrong with you, idiot? She's punching me in. And we took it, but yeah, things like that happen from random strangers, like. It's crazy sometimes how the people closest to you will look at you and see you struggling and they'll be happy. Complete stranger is just willing to give freely, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that dichotomy does seem strange on the outside. Um, and I'm familiar with what you're talking about as far as being able to accept charity from a stranger more readily than someone you know. And I, I think I think this is reflected by the fact. So in Islam, charity can be just a plethora of things. So one thing that really fascinated me when I was learning about Islam is that charity can be in the form of a family member, like a husband or wife, um, being like consistently kind with their spouse. And I know it sounds like, okay, that should just be a given, right? You have to be kind with your spouse, right? But I think it can become really easy, like when you have day to day struggles, with your kids and your spouse. Sometimes you can it can be harder to come home from a long day of work or school or whatever it is that you do and have your patience intact, right? And so all the time, you have parents being snippy with their kids, you have spouses being snippy with each other. Um, it just happens. It's a fact of life. There is no family home that is completely and utterly peaceful 100% of the time. But in Islam, there's this concept that putting aside, like actively working to put aside your feelings of frustration or tiredness or what have you, to remain patient and kind with your family members, even though they're the ones that put up with you, right? Um, that is an act of charity. So if you're out in the workplace or you're out in public with strangers, most of the time you're going to be polite and courteous because that's just what you do. You don't want to have beef with strangers, right? And you're only going to have limited interactions with them. So it's easy to put on your nice face and be nice to people even when they might be unkind to you in public, right? But um, conversely, when you come home, you're dealing with your family members all of the time, constantly. They're constantly getting under your skin. They see the sides of you that you would never let anyone in the public see, right? But if you're able to work against your own human tendencies, because it's human, right? Such that you can be consistently kind with your spouse and let things go when your spouse is having a bad day and says something to you or acts with you in such a way that um, isn't that kind, right? If you can let things go, let things slide, um, suppress your urge to react a certain way or to act a certain way towards your spouse or your family, that's charity, because it can be really hard to do that with family as opposed to strangers that you see for a limited part of the day. And I think that's somewhat related to the fact that we can accept charity more readily from strangers because we know that they're not going to come knocking on our door asking for a return favor. But when it comes to close friends and family, we know from experience that that can and does happen, right? And so there's this like different dynamic that seems so contrary to the fact that these are our close friends and family, but it is what it is, right? Um, and so I think that's kind of interesting.
No, very, very valid points, discussion points that you brought up. Uh, different, a different view that I didn't even look at, like being kind to your spouse can be charity. You know, that could be a form of, right. And yeah, you're right. Also, accepting something from a stranger is like, hey, I'm never going to see this guy again as easily than accepting something from somebody you may know. And yeah, definitely, definitely good points you conveyed there.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I believe it's the default that people are like super mean to their family, but I'm not sure if I'm explaining it right, but it's just like, for instance, I know that when I'm having a bad day and I'm frustrated, right? And like I go to my class and I come home and it's late, um, I know that if I say something in a kind of harsh tone, that my husband isn't going to hold me to account for it, right? He's not going to not talk to me for 3 days. You know what I mean? He's going to let it slide because he knows he loves me, number one. Two, he knows I'm tired. He knows all of the things that are going on in my life and what I'm doing daily that could lead to me being in a bad mood. So he's going to be a little more forgiving, which could, if I'm not careful, lead to me um, having less discretion in how it is that I act with him. You know, I could think, hey, look, yeah, I know that. And this is actually something that's common in the behavior of young children, actually. So, children, they tend to act out more in situations where they feel safe. So, if they feel like they're in a safe environment with safe caregivers or adults, they will act out more often than they will in a situation where it's like a new environment or new people are around them. You know what I mean? And I think that um, I don't think it's just young children, obviously. I think that all of us can do that when we're in a comfortable environment around people that we love and we know who love us. Um, we can have less discretion in our behavior because we know that they'll forgive us, or we know that they're more likely to than some stranger, that we can't bank on how they're going to react to us, right? But we know how our loved ones will. Um, and I think that I mean, I'm not going to speak for God, right? But I think that is what might contribute to that being a form of charity. You know what I mean? As far as, being super consistent in your kind and patient treatment of your family members. So,
Well, yeah. So the charity thing. Let's stick with that at the moment because we're about the charity. You're 100% right. Um, how many times do we drive past a homeless person and just try to act like we don't see him or something, right? How many times do we even assume they're making all this money like it's a scam or something like that, right? Uh, there's like multiple examples throughout the Bible that like describe these circumstances that when you gave to somebody in need, right, maybe even seemingly in need, I guess, that you were giving to Jesus is what Jesus explains. So whether or not that person was intentions were well, yours were, right? And I'd like to believe that God admires that, and he's like, yeah, in the background, even though the world will tell you like, hey, you stupid idiot, you gave to that homeless guy that's just gonna go smoke it all on crack, and you know, so yeah. I mean, I could have added a lot more verses. These are the two verses that stuck out to me, but yeah, there's a lot of verses that describe the importance of giving to the needy.
yeah, I love that you brought that up because I have heard, especially when I lived in Oregon, and I lived just outside of Portland. And people would say all the time, look, you're not native here. I guess you don't understand, but you can't just give money to people. They're going to do this and that with it. They're going to spend it on alcohol or drugs or whatever. But my perspective has always been, number one, you don't know anything about that person. You really don't. You can't pretend that you know what that person's situation is. And also, another part of it is that what wealth I have in my possession, it didn't come to me by my own efforts. It never really belonged to me. It's just coming through me to some ends, right? And in Islam, like spending on your family and the things that you normally spend your money on, right? Um, like your rent, food, stuff for your family, that's charity. So you have to spend on that, you know, in charity. But also, you can't just say, look, this is my money, so therefore I'm going to be extremely tight fisted and I will decide who deserves my hard earned money. If someone is presented before you in need, like you were saying, Matt, there's a reason for that. God put that person in your path, you know? So you, there's no way that someone can look at someone in need in front of them, asking them, and say, look, I know better, and I'm going to decide unilaterally that you don't deserve my wealth, you know? And I think most people do that because they think, look, I've worked really, really hard for my money. And so this is something valuable to me. And so then that makes them more, um, they think they're being discerning about what they're, like where they're letting their money go. But there's another concept that I absolutely love in Islam is that in order to be righteous, you have to give from what you love. You can't just, have a little tiny, you know, change jar in your car where that's change that you would forget anyway that it ever existed to give to people, right? You have to actually be giving from what you love, whether it's money or clothing or whatever is dear to you, your time, valuable time. You have to
Bitcoin?
give from whatever is like important to you, right? Or else it doesn't really mean a whole lot if you're just like
Yeah.
gathering up your scraps and you're
Yep.
like, here
Yep.
you go. This
Yep.
is, look, I'm being so charitable, right? So
Yep.
I think that's also
Yep.
an important part of it. Sorry to soapbox.
Nope. Nope. You hit it on the head. You are
Excellent sound
100% right.
effects.
If I'm saying, yeah, if I'm saying, um, hey, I don't really like bologna, you know what I mean? But I got a drawer full of bologna, and I also got a freezer full of top notch meat, right? And I'm like, I just give them the bologna, you know? Did I really give? It's like, no, I'm not going to eat this, but I'm going to give the scraps to the people that I feel are less fortunate, right? So really, did I do it out of love? Um, is the question, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's what you were saying. It has to be out of love. Exactly.
yeah, so uh, one of the things Paul wrote was, if you see your brother in need and you're doing well and you don't feel like the need to help him, like there's no love in your heart. Like there's no love. And Raj, one of the things Raj is really big on is love. And which is one of the things like Jesus was big on as well. But like, how can you look at somebody and see them struggling and you're doing well and you don't feel an obligation to, you know, offer them a hand, help, something or other. So yeah, your intentions. This is the whole conversation of my notes. Your intentions are everything. I mean, I flip side of the argument, right? Let's just say this. Let's say, hey, I'm willing to give everything I have to somebody in need. I'm gonna give everything I have, and I do. I give it to them, and then I go all over the news media and I brag about how I gave them everything, and look at how great I am. Was there love involved with it, or were my intentions were, hey, I'm gonna do this, and hopefully, you know, I'll gain some traction, and you know, I had an alternative motive essentially, right? I could have, uh, you know, got paid for interviews, something of that nature, I guess. But yeah, I think I brought that up in one of my earlier presentations. Was in the afterlife one we did, is when you're standing there at judgment in front of Jesus and you're saying, hey, you know, we prophesied in your name, we cured diseases, we cast out demons in your name, and he'll tell you, get away from me, I never knew you. Um, because your intentions were never. That's the crazy thing, is God will still use you to like bless others, even though you're not in his blessing, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he'll
That
still
makes
use
sense.
you to bless others. Yeah, he'll still use you to bless others, but you got your reward here on earth. Like there's nothing for you after this, like, you know. So God will use these people that have YouTube channels that show how much they give to charity. I gave $20,000 to this homeless man. Uh, I did it over and over and over and over, and you know you're probably making more than that off your YouTube channel, you know, and that's how you're making your money, is by showing how charitable you are, how good of a person you are, and God is still blessing those people through you, but there's no blessing for you. You know what I mean? Your blessing is here on earth. Well, hey man, you live comfortably, you live lavishly, you know. Um,
That's a really super good point, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think you put it really well. It really does all come down to intention. I did want to throw kind of another element in there. Um, so we believe that you should still give charity publicly to some extent, right? So, um, so we at least believe there's a place for it. So, but that's where intention becomes really super important. So, of course, the better charity is done in private, where it's just a secret between you and God, right? I mean, ideally, not even the person you're giving to, right, knows the name, can put a name to it, right? But there is a place for public giving because um, even though those people may not be the people on YouTube, and we don't have to name drop, but we know who we're talking about, at least a few examples. Um, they may not be sincere in their intentions, but there are people who are watching who find true, sincere inspiration in that. Um, and so there, there, from my perspective, there's a place for public giving, but only you, well, sometimes not even yourself, but it's only God who really knows if your heart is in the right place. So even if you're like, oh hey, look, I'm going to give publicly, because I want to inspire people, but your heart still might not be in the right place, right? So it really just, like you said, Matt, it comes down to intention, but I still do think there is a place for public charity.
Yeah. I'm like, I guess I'm still learning. Uh, I'm very, I'm still very new to my walk here. Uh, and I've fallen over and over and over and over. And the fact that the last 2 weeks were about forgiveness, and last week when Stephanie was talking about like not to be too hard on yourself was something that really like hit at home as well. Because like, I mean, that is something you could do, and don't expect yourself to be God because we're not, you know. And then was it your
Right.
buddy Matthew? Was it your buddy Matthew that was on? Was that his name, Raj?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's the one that said, and it really hit. Like when you're standing at judgment, Jesus won't ask you, "Why did you sin?" I'll ask you, "Why didn't you repent?" Uh, yeah. So that's kind of a off topic thing, but charity is very very important, man. And for me, I guess where I struggle with is accepting it. Like I don't have a problem giving it, like, but I really have a problem like accepting it, like under almost any circumstance. Like I'm just, if someone wants to give me something, you know, Raj is like, oh well, let's hang out, man. Let's go out to eat.
No, I hear you there, because
uh,
like there's definitely an aspect of being independent and like strong, I guess, that like we want to have. And then if someone gives you charity, it kind of undermines that whole idea of being independent and strong. It kind of makes you feel like, oh, like I, maybe I'm weak and I can't like make it on my own, so I need help. And but like that's just not the right way to look at it. Like, because I mean, if you go for full God mode, like you're thinking, well, God provides everything. God's keeping our heart beating. So you'd be dead if it wasn't for God, technically, I guess. Um, and yeah, but I think that's something to maybe kind of dive into a little more, maybe. Like, what is that? Is it like maybe a man thing too? Like, is there like an aspect of being a man is not like getting help from someone, being able to make it on your own? Um, and yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think ego is probably the uh, the primary way to describe it. I guess I would say ego. Um, and I don't know, I'm probably for the 39 years and 11 months, right? I spent my life trying to be the man, but I didn't know what it meant to be a man, right? If that makes sense. So, like, a lot of times we think what the world tells us is what a man is supposed to be. And especially what the world tells us today, I full wholeheartedly believe is not what a man is supposed to be. There's nothing wrong with being a masculine man at all, and we need more of them. But there is something wrong with men telling other men that, hey, man, the amount of women you sleep with is, you know, puts a puts you in a higher echelon. Like, no, it really doesn't, man. You know, uh, we need to tell men it's okay to be a good man. Like you don't. I think there's this narrative now across the spectrum in general that men always want to have this story about how I was this bad guy and I. No, you weren't, man. You didn't want to deal. Trust me. You don't. Like Raj, I think you're a good dude. Like you know what I mean. Now I'm assuming I don't know you very well like that, but I think you've probably been a good dude your whole life, which is great, man. You know, and like, but what I hear is a lot of people want to have this story about how they did this and no, it's okay to be a good dude your whole life. Like matter of fact, be a good dude your whole life because there's consequences that you got to deal with when you're not. And I've dealt with them in my life. So getting back on topic, I guess it's 100% ego and men. I would say not leading godly men, not leading men. So when you remove God from the equation, you don't have an example, man. You're left with what the world tells you, right? So, it's kind of my outlook.
What
Matt,
do you think, Des?
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you, Matt. So are you constantly asking for charity? I think I know the answer, but I need to ask you.
Never, never in
Okay,
my life have I ever.
that's what I figured. So I just wanted to introduce you to a concept that like blew my mind, sort of, and it's this idea that um, there's this thing. So if you're wondering, and it's the collective if people in general are wondering who is most deserving of my charity, who I have a set limited set of resources. Who should I be giving to first? You know, and the idea is that if you really want to know who needs it most, it's those among you who act like they don't need it. They say that they aren't asking, they aren't seeking charity. They're constantly giving themselves, and they're righteous people, right? But they're not asking. It's those who are silently in need, right? And they most likely don't think that they need it. And so those people are the ones who are singled out as being the most deserving of charity. It's not the most in need, right? But the most deserving of your charity. And so I just wanted to kind of introduce you to that concept because I kind of feel like you really fit that category. You're always giving and doing your best to be righteous and upstanding, right? To be a strong man, a godly man. And you're not asking. You're not going out constantly trying to see what you can get from people. So it's just something to think about.
No, I thank you for that. Definitely for that confirmation and there was a lot of truth in what you said. Um, I wouldn't say I don't know if the word is charity, right? But I would describe myself as maybe I'm getting too vulnerable here, but I would describe myself as this person that's like just a little boy always crying out on the inside but just silent on the outside, right? And like, you know, still stuck on, whatever traumas, whatever, I'm like, no, I don't need no help from anybody because uh men don't cry for help. And there's these trigger words now that the modern day population likes to use, like toxic masculinity, which I think is like overused, like narcissist, I think is overused, extremely overused as well. But like, there is a point that it is kind of toxic that I'm so proud or so that I won't even let yourself be hurt. You know what I mean? Because nah, you can't let the world see you hurt because you're, you know, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Gotta be a strong man.
Well, it's not a strong man though, but that's what we probably think it is,
Tough,
right?
tough
And
guy.
in our culture, yeah. Well, in our culture, like a culture here, culturally here, like as a young boy, you're never cry under any circumstance, you know, under any circumstance. And I can recall being at funerals and I don't let your get over there, don't let your grandmother see you crying. Get out of here, don't let your grandmother see you crying, you know. And I know now as a man, or not, I didn't know 5 years ago, I'll tell you that, not even 10, 20 years ago, even, let alone. And that wasn't okay. Like, there are circumstances a man you shouldn't cry for, like, hey, when you're struggling financially, just figure it out, man. It's a problem that there's a solution for. Uh, but there are circumstances that, like, as a man, where it's 100% okay that you can cry, you know what I mean? And, you know, and sometimes we hold in our hurt and we don't realize we're hurting the people around us as a result. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Well, I've had somebody tell me is, you know, you're bleeding all over us. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, I would say you hit it on the head, Desiree. Sometimes it's not like money people need. Sometimes it's just like love, you know, and then loving the unlovable. Maybe that's something we could do a topic on one day or something, man. Loving the unlovable. But like some people won't even allow themselves to receive love because they're so broken, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it also is important to, like you said, I think it's important to say that like charity just isn't in the form of finances, of money. It really isn't. And I think that's what most people think of when they think of charity. We all do, right? But I think it's super important that you made that point. And what a lot of people might not need. Just I think I'm just repeating exactly what you said. A lot of people, they don't need any money. They don't need a cent. They have money to spare. They have money to give. But what they need instead is love. And I think it's amazing that you made that point.
Yeah, well, I had to learn that a lot recently uh, through my own trials and errors, whatever. But yeah, you're 100% right. Um, and that person has to be willing to receive that love or that charity, whatever we want to call it, whatever it is they need at that moment. You got to be willing to receive it. And God has a strange way of humbling us, right? Where you're put in a position where you don't have anybody else but God. And you're put in a position because as men, we're used to like fixing things. You know, that's what we do. We're solution based. Like women are emotional based. That's why they're better at, uh, you know, the being the home keeper. They're better with the kids. Men were just solution
Right.
based. It's always solution. You know, like I'll give an example. When my wife went into surgery, in my head, and this led to us arguing, but in my head, all right, I got to figure out how we can all get out of this with as little collateral damage as a unit, and you know, move forward. That's what went in my head right away. And my wife, well, why aren't you emotionally present? You know, I'm like, oh, I guess I wasn't. You know what I mean? And I mean that's just how we're built, though. We're built differently and whatnot. But yeah,
We've got different
yeah,
jobs.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So are there any times that um I'm looking for some stories now, like are there any times you gave to charity that really made you feel good? Like the reward was in the giving?
For me,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's only when it's anonymous. That's the only
Yeah,
time when that person had no way to know who it was.
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah.
How did those fit? Like what kind of was it like a mosque thing at the mosque or was it like where do you do stuff like that?
Um, so actually, it was a um a friend of mine, or I don't know her like super 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 well, um but I knew her well enough to know her situation and that she wouldn't be asking unless she really needed it on Facebook. And I this kind of like going against the whole like not talking about it, but essentially I had a cash app that was anonymous. It didn't have any identifiers for me. And even though she was my friend and we talked all the time, I just sent it right through there. And it was really funny, and it really tested me in that moment, is that she posted another post and said, oh my gosh, you sent this, da da da, so please message me so I can say thank you. And then I saw in the comments some random girl. She said, "Oh, that was me." I was like, "What?" No, because she posted a
And you wanted to
screenshot
be
of me
like, no,
saying,
no, it was me,
No,
but
it
you,
"Yeah, I really did." And then
did good.
I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm being tested right this moment. I'm being
Mhm.
tested." Um, and I guess she got her little gift. My friend has a little shop or whatever. And she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna DM you, and I'm gonna send you a little gift from my shop." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna have to just be salty about it, and otherwise, I'm just gonna ruin it like for myself."
Yeah, I would say for me, it has been seeing my obedience, right? Uh, transform people. I've, helping. I'm trying to be as ambiguous as possible about this, but helping people who were really in a bad place and doing it for a long time, and then seeing like that person go from basically being like a suicidal individual to you know a productive adult that a good person now. So something like that, and you know not being like, hey, look at me, everybody, I did that for you. Nah, because I didn't. Like, I was able to steward that process. That was it. It wasn't me, you know. And believe me, there was times I was like, I wanted to, be petty, but no, no, don't. And I always tell this to people too. I live my life by this motto, especially like nobody, you don't, nobody owes you anything in this world, right? Nobody owes you anything. Like if you think anybody owes you anything, you'll never have anything because you're just gonna always think that you're entitled and that you owe something. But just like nobody owes you anything, you're not indebted to anybody as well. So
Except God,
that,
that's it.
yep, that
And I think
that,
that's what
that
we
that's
forget.
yep, yep. You're not indebted to anybody either, like And then when somebody like asks me, hey, what do you want me to know? Just pay it forward to someone else. Then pay it forward to someone else if you want to help, and then send that message to someone. Just keep paying it forward. So yeah,
Yeah, I like that pay it forward mentality. It was a cool thing with the tolls, like someone would pay the guy behind him, and then I don't know, like sometimes that could last a long time. So that's pretty cool. I think for me, one fun time I remember um was in Hawaii, and just living the life, and there's homeless people there, and one guy had like a ukulele, and I was putting some money in my mom's backpack just because I didn't have like I couldn't keep it on me. I was gonna go in the water and stuff, and I just like kind of noticed the this homeless guy, and I was like, okay, wait a second, let me take some of that and give it to him, and did my thing, and then got back to the hotel, and I was just chilling, and the same guy was playing the ukulele with like a sandwich, and I was just enjoying it. So I don't know, it just felt like like a full circle type of thing, and it was just like super awesome to be like really got a good Hawaiian vibe going, and I was just like totally feeling it. So that was like really good, good experience for me. Definitely selfish.
I got one how a story. I got one how a story backfired on me, man.
Ooh,
Trying to be generous to somebody backfired on me. Uh, I used to live in when I was in the Navy. I lived in San Diego, and San Diego's conducive. They got a lot of homeless people as well. And one day I was walking around, and a homeless guy came up to me. I just walked out of this place called the Spaghetti Factory back then. I don't know if it's still around. So this is probably 20 years ago now. But Spaghetti Factory. Walk out, and this guy asked me, "Hey, can you give me some money for something to eat?" And so I handed him, I think it was $10, man. That's all I had in my pocket. I handed him $10, and this is like a while back. And the $10, right? He tells me, "What the fuck am I gonna eat with this?" Hey, I remember I was so mad, Raj. I was so mad, dude. And yeah, that's from one of the times that trying to be charitable backfired on me. And I was just like, man, I'm giving you money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to give you shit. And here I am giving you $10, and you're like, what the fuck I'm gonna eat with this? That's exactly what he told me, man. And I was like, he wanted to go to the spaghetti factory, and he wanted to eat. You
yeah,
know, he
yeah.
wanted $30 so he can have a meal just like I had. I was like, I was on a E1 salary back then. You know, I was probably making $400 every first and 15th or something. You know, I didn't have money like that. But yeah, that was that time that kind of backfired on me, Raj.
That'll happen sometimes. Like, I think it's interesting. When you give to homeless people, it's important to be in the right mentality because, yeah, sometimes homeless people don't take it all too well. Like sometimes they'll be like, fuck you, I don't want this shit or something. Like they could be like maybe disrespectful, who knows? And um, so yeah, it's it's definitely good to be in the right spirit. You're not like, oh, I'm above them and so I'm gonna help them out from my place of um highness, but rather it's, I think like I'm all about coming in from a place of gratitude, like, wow, I'm so glad I have the ability to give to someone else and can do this. Um, so yeah, so it I don't know, can help someone else or um whatever,
Well,
right?
here's a here's a different dimension as well, man. It's something I didn't think about. Is like people who expect. All right, so I'll give the example. So I didn't have a license at the time. I had just gotten a DUI, and I had my license suspended for a year. My life was real crazy during that
Mm,
time. Just lots of really bad things going on at the same time. And this guy was driving me to work one day, and he was just some Uber driver or whatever. And I was talking about, I think it was during the Trump administration. Yeah, it was, where Trump was trying to say that he was gonna, instead of giving people money for food, he's gonna give them food. Right? Okay, you need food, we'll give you food. I think it's fair, right? Uh, you're giving something you need, and then this guy says that, well, I just don't feel like he should be telling us what we should be eating. And it's like you're getting free food and you're pissed off about, you know. It reminds me of when the Israelites fled Egypt and they just crossed the Red Sea. So they fled Egypt from slavery, from this oppression, from this tyranny, from these like one of the worst living conditions they could have, and they're free now, right? So they're free now, right? And they're complaining in the desert about, well, when we were under slavery, at least we had food. You know, it's like, do you understand that like being a responsible human being costs. You know what I mean? And if you want a handout, you're gonna get exactly what it is. You shouldn't have any say so in what somebody tells you. Like if someone gives you $10 when you walk out of the spaghetti factory and you're like, what the fuck am I eat with this? You know, or if somebody's handing you food and you're like, well, I don't want to eat this. It's like you have food. If I took that to a third world country, if I took that to, some in Djibouti in Africa right now, and I had food, they would love me, man. Here, oh yeah, oh whatever I have, they would be grateful for it. So it's like have a sense of, I guess when you're on the receiving end of charity is like what this is leading into, is have a sense of gratitude or whatever you're getting. Let's just say like, hey, you're trying to raise money for some, hey, I need to raise $5,000 so I don't lose my house. Then you only raise 2,500, and then you only got 2,500 fucking dollars. What do you mean? That's more than you had before. You know what I mean? Like, and then you're still like, you don't even realize you don't even have that in your pocket to begin with. Now, maybe you have the ability to go out and make $2,500 now or something. You know what I mean? But um, when you're on the receiving end of charity, it's important too that your intentions are in the right spot too. Are you doing it out of are you receiving this out of a sense that you're accepting God's blessing, or are you receiving this in a sense of entitlement?
Do you know what? That kind of makes me think like maybe it's a a better way to look at work is actually pure charity. It's like, oh, I'm rather than working for money, I'm working just to give, just to give. And you're giving me just to give as well. And it's just like, um, yeah, I don't know. That's maybe an interesting way to look at work is like it's actually charity, but it goes like both ways kind of thing.
Well, so here's the thing about charity, right? Charity should not be, um, I don't want to work, so feed me, okay? Biblically, it says a man who doesn't work doesn't eat. It expresses it explicitly explains the importance of work ethic. Like, look at the book of Proverbs. It tells you about the sluggard over and over and over and over and over. Like how being lazy is just not a godly attribute over and over and over. A man who doesn't eat or a man who doesn't work doesn't eat. So if you're a perfectly capable and able human being, which is how I feel about myself, it's maybe why I never try to accept charity. Like you could find a way, right? But there are sometimes circumstances that are out of your control, that it is okay to accept charity, but you shouldn't accept it. That's probably a good point that we need to make, is don't accept charity, and I'm going to add that into my notes as a matter of fact. This is good conversation. Don't accept charity out of sense of entitlement. Accept it out of a sense of that this is a blessing. Like, if I give you $10 again, and I'm walking out of the spaghetti factory, and I'll be like, what the fuck am I going to eat with this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like so I mean the reason I talk about work is I don't know, I think it's a cool angle of it and I had an experience where I was a bit ungrateful for getting some so there's this lady and I was helping her out with some computer stuff and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll pay you and stuff." And so I think I was helping her out for like an hour and then she gave me like $5 for helping her out. And so part of me was like, you know what? Thank you so much. Like this is great. Then another part of me was like, man, $5 for an hour? Like, I'm like an adult, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, I think you're touching on something there too, because it is important to
mhm.
understand sometimes that people are taking advantage of you. And no, and you got to have that discernment, right? So if you see some
Well,
elderly lady, right, that
that's why I'm
obviously $5.
sorry. Yeah, no, that's why I'm like trying to angle it as a form of charity rather than like work. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so like for in that example, like for me, I probably would have laughed too, like, because in her mind, she probably thinks it was a just salary for what you did and whatnot.
Yeah.
I would have at that point been like, you know what, don't worry about it. Like, it's on me. Like, hey, I'm glad I got to help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Well,
but see,
there was like a specific
I
time I
think
can remember.
that's where the that manhood like thing is kind of coming
Yeah,
in, and
yeah, yeah.
better just accept it with grace and yeah, right. And then but then like so the next time she asked for help, she actually gave me $20 for like the same thing. And so, that was far more what I was like expecting in my own mind. But like
Well,
um
well, so so in like Web3 speaking, right?
yeah.
There's been multiple occasions where, and you could probably testify with this, and I'm
Yeah.
not going anywhere with this, but where somebody would mention how they paid you for something you did, and sometimes the man in me just wants to be like, you know, like, do you know what my time is worth? Like, you understand what my time is worth? Like, at a certain point, you were paying me. If we're breaking it down, you're probably paying me 30 cents an hour. You know what I mean? I don't live in Bangladesh or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I live in the U.S. and I do okay, and I'm worth a lot more than 30 cents. And like, so either don't pay me because it doesn't mean anything. Like, nothing you're doing is not it's not benefiting me. Like, it's not going to change my life one way or another. And chances are, if I'm doing something with somebody, like, I'm doing it because I believe in what we're doing. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, yeah. I think I've had that experience like you're talking about where people think that like we're square because you paid me 30 cents an hour for you know. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where like looking at it more as like um a charity can come in handy. Like, okay, I'm doing this just to benefit whatever the situation, the project, or even thinking of it as doing it for God. Like the last job I did, sound job, I was definitely thinking of it in terms of working for God more than working for whatever. And it was still stressful, but I got like it does help to kind of shift your mentality to working for God rather than working for individuals.
Well, as a Christian, what Christians are supposed to believe. Everything you do is to honor God, right? I mean, everything. So you don't give your best because you expect, some monetary reward or some tangible reward. You give your best because God is watching and you're giving it to show that everything you do is to honor God, because like work ethic is something like God really admires, right? Um, Something I think He really has favor on people that have that as a personal belief. But every aspect of your life, and this is how the Muslims live, which is really cool. How we get to interact with them as often as, I mean, you probably do more than I do, but I get to interact with them as often as I do now, which is once a week seemingly, but it's cool even throughout a little chat. Is that their religion is not a religion; it's their life, you know, and that's how we're supposed to behave as Christians. So, everything we do it to honor God, not to seek monetary reward or likes on a post or followers on YouTube or you know. So like
Sure.
you guys were giving me a hard time. You guys were giving me a hard time. Well, not a hard time. You were kind of like joking with me about it, and I was like, man, I got to take this more serious, So I got my new mic now, and It's because if everything that me and you have done, and we've done a lot together, but I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money into those things, you know what I mean? Why would I not do the same for what it is that we're doing here, man? If this is like to honor God, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where that came from. I'm like, you know what, man, I got to take this more serious. And I look at your brother. Your brother had a really cool mic, you know, and I got I was using this headset for a little bit, and that's how you could hear me. So I did it yesterday. Finally, I got myself a cool mic. That's for you, God. But yeah, so you know everything you're supposed to do, and I feel that Western Christians can learn a lot from Muslims in general. Man, is number one is your devotion to your faith. Like it's not a Sunday event. It's not a hey, I'm in a bad bind. I need your help now event. It's if you're gonna give God all the bad, you got to give him all the good as well. You know, so.
I think that it reminds me a lot of living in a state of prayer, which is a lot of religions talk about this kind of concept. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's like the ideal, like that's the top level there is when you're just constantly living in that state of being with God and aware of God and communicating with God. And
Well,
yeah,
yeah, what we're taught is you're supposed to consult with him in everything that you do. Um,
party
I mean,
poppers.
even the things that we think are small.
Hmm.
So, you can hear him. You can hear him.
Yeah, that mic's good, man.
Yeah, that's the kids. That's the kids in the back here. But with everything you do, with even the small things like, um, you know, God, where is it you want me to go today? Hey, God, like, thank you for waking up. Or hey, God, like, you know, what should we? He just wants you to converse with him on anything, man. What should we eat for dinner? Uh, Things of that nature. And then when you get into these binds, you have this like relationship with him that like you know him, so you're probably more comfortable asking for help at that point. You're like, oh man, here I am. Only when things get bad, I'm coming and asking and talking with you. It's like, hey man, I've been talking with you this whole time. Like, hey, can you help me now? And I don't know, maybe he helps you out better, man. I'm still working on that aspect, but yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to recall a story, bringing it back to charity, of where I and it was kind of like doing the thing that you kind of don't don't approve of is I worked at a marijuana dispensary and I was making videos and kind of like trying to come up with some video ideas and I was like, you know what would be a cool idea is if we filmed ourselves like giving weed to homeless people. And the main reason I thought of that idea is that there was this girl I talked to and she said that when she was homeless, like the best thing that she could ever get was like some weed. And that resonated with me a lot because I'm like, yeah, that honestly that makes a lot of sense to me. And so that was kind of like a thing I did, and so it was a lot of fun actually. Me and my buddy, we went out to the some homeless encampments and went to some tents and just distributed some joints and made a whole video on it. But then when it came to when I showed the video to the owner, the CEO of the company, he was like, "You know what? I don't really like it. Like this, it doesn't feel right." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? I think I think you're right. It doesn't really feel right." So, um, I guess it kind of backfired, but it kind of like I don't know. It was kind of just like good all around. Like it was a good experience for me to kind of get out
I think
there, make a video, do stuff, and yeah.
well, I think your intentions were well, right? You
I
didn't
think
have
so.
malicious intent behind
Yeah.
what you were doing, but the So the dilemma is when we run into something, right? Are we being led by God, or are we being led by ourselves? Sometimes something could feel right and it could still be wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why diving into the scripture and understanding the standard of, I guess, what I would call right and wrong is important. Because I could tell you numerous times that I thought I was doing the right thing, and I seemed like I was doing the right thing, and when I go back and look at it, I'm like, pretty sure, pretty check, you know. I was like, I probably wasn't supposed to be doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to know that standard. And there has to be a standard. It can't just be what anybody feels. Otherwise, it's too ambiguous. It's it's there's no clear path. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but I think honestly, I do feel like it was kind of like I feel pretty righteous in doing it and still not publishing it. And I don't know, I just feel like the whole thing was yeah, I feel like the whole thing was overall a positive experience. And but yeah, it was like it is kind of weird to try and make that like an advertisement of donating stuff. And so you kind of advertise that. There is a weird vibe there that I think came across in the video, and that's why we didn't end up publishing it. Um, but
Yeah.
overall, it was a good experience.
Well, that's still cool, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. Raj was out handing weed to the homeless, man.
yeah,
Smoke it up.
some good shit.
No. Yeah, it was I guess I
I
got
rolled
some
everyone
value out of it
myself
today,
too.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna donate to myself too, is what you said. Definitely.
No, no, I didn't
You
donate
were
to
giving, you were
myself.
donating,
No.
you were no, 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 you were donating with, you were donating to them, but you were sharing what they had and just hanging out with them.
No, no, no. I have plenty
Uh
of my own stuff. I didn't have
I'm
to do
just
any of
playing.
that.
Yeah, I'm just playing, man. Um, yeah, today I didn't expect to really look at things when I wrote my notes. I didn't expect to receive some of the things I received today. So kind of like a recap is how when you're on the receiving side of charity, um, how important it is to receive it correctly too. I guess is what we've is probably the proper way of verbalizing it. Uh,
And receiving it at all rather than denying
so
it.
that yeah, well, receiving it right is the proper way of receiving it. Period. So receiving it, you should be able to receive it. But if you're seeking to receive it, it's probably wrong. I don't know. If you're seeking to receive charity, you're probably wrong. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Maybe in most cases, maybe there's, I don't know. But yeah, that was something that I took out of today, man. Like how my whole life have had problems with receiving from others, man. And Raj, it's been interesting getting to know you for maybe like the last year and a half now. Maybe is that what it is now, or what? Maybe about a year and a half, maybe.
Maybe even longer, bro.
It probably no, like 2022. You're right, bro. It was even longer than that. It was like 2022. It's like 2 years now.
I'm
Um.
not sure.
So yeah, it's been getting interesting to know you. I think you're a stand-up guy. One day we're gonna kick it. Maybe at Ethereum Denver or something, or maybe we'll just have to plan a trip or something, man, and definitely try to have one of these conversations in person at a meetup or something. But I'm glad you reached out to me about this thing that you're trying to create. You're trying to make Peace Ants a God First organization, and it's been helping me out. I I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man. And I really appreciate you being on board with the whole idea. Like, there's not too many people who would be excited about me making Peace Hands God First organization. You're one of the few people who's like, oh, hell yeah, let's do this. So, yeah, without you, I mean, I probably wouldn't have done this. So, thank you for making this a thing. And um, yeah, I think I think we had a really solid discussion on charity. I'm sorry Desiree dropped out. Probably some technical difficulties, but I really appreciate Desiree coming on and all she's been contributing to the conversations. Like she's really wise woman. So thank you, Desiree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully we can get your brother in here next week. He might have been traveling. My understanding, he said he was going back to South Africa, is what he was saying. Leaving Saudi, going back to South Africa for. He's done with school now, I guess, is for the summer or whatever it is. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think
But
so.
yeah, I always like when I give my presentation and he follows it up with like his perspective because like it just confirms a lot more things for me. And hopefully he's on next week. Maybe we could get Stephanie on again. But I'm gonna invite some more people. I think, man. What we're doing here, I think, is meaningful, and if we can keep this rolling, and I don't know, see where it goes. I have no expectations, just like you. No, I don't care if this thing ever gets to 1 million viewers ever. It means nothing to me. Like the value we get it out of what we're doing is exactly what we're doing, and I think people will see that, right? And yeah,
Yeah, in a way, I think this is kind of my form of worship. Um, to come together and just talk about God and godly things. And I don't know, I really enjoy it. And I'm really glad we committed to doing it every week and we're making a habit out of it. So I'm all about
yeah,
like that's kind of my state right now is like I'm trying to get solid habits in place so I can like develop more. And so yeah, this has been really helpful to me too.
well, also at the seemingly one of the peak times of the week for me, it's 6 p.m. Friday night. We start this, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and like most people, oh, I want to go. Most people want to go do this. Like, no, this is what I'm committed to. So, 6 p.m. Friday night, like from 6 to 8, basically, just counting us. We're not doing anything because I'm gonna be in this. And I told everybody, a few people walked in here while we were doing this. They're like, "Oh, you're still talking?" Like, yeah, we're still talking. Yeah. So yeah. This is like one of the high points of my week. I think this is one of the things I look forward to. Actually, Fridays in general, man, because I have a men's group we do in the morning, and actually, I just did. So I'm kind of like lagging behind. I just did the forgiveness one with them, so that was pretty cool. And the fact that we touched on this for forgiveness for 2 weeks and this, yeah. But you got any ideas for a next week conversation, man?
Well, if Stephanie can make it, I think the 12 tribes of Israel would be cool. Again, I think prayer would be a really nice one, just like kind of going through the different prayers we like. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of the as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I really like that prayer. It like it's I think it's like well, on some YouTube video, David was like fighting Goliath, and he did that prayer. And yeah, I
Yeah.
just really dig it. It feels kind of badass.
Well, I think you like that Psalm 91 prayer as well, man.
Yeah,
I think that one's pretty raw too. But yeah, and actually, I should show you that eventually. But I'm working on it. I got something cool, man. I'm working on like kind of like a clothing line, man. For it's called Psalm 91, bro. I got a whole pitch deck I made and everything, and so yeah, man, we're going a lot of different
spicy.
directions with this thing we're doing, man. And so I had to sit still for a little bit, and I'm not it's hard for me sometimes not to navigate myself, but I'm like, all right, let me be like water. Let God, if I'm frozen today, you know, if I'm liquid today, if I'm steamed tomorrow, man, whatever it is, like God's directing me, man, and I'm just learning not to trust my own intuition and just see where He directs me, man. And things have been going better as a result. So there's that.
Awesome, man.
I'll think
Well,
of something though. I'll think of something for a topic, and we'll post it in the group. And or if anybody is looking at this and they want to, you know, comment in the video. If you're not, that's cool too. Be honest, but you know, if you got anybody has a topic you guys want to hear, we're more than willing, and we accept any challenge. I tell you that.
yeah, we roll with the punches here. And if anyone's interested in joining the discussions, you're welcome. You can check the description for the Discord link. And yeah, I think that should do it for this week, right, Matt?
Yep.
Awesome.
Good.
Well,
Yes, definitely.
thanks oh, and we got to close it with a prayer. So, what do you want to do it today?
All right, Raj, calling
All
me
right.
out, man. All right, man. All right, God the Father, the Supreme, we just thank you for allowing us to come in this moment and fellowship with spiritual nurturing and providing value in our lives with this conversation today. Lead us in next week's conversation, whatever topic it is you want us to lead us to. Forgive us and forgive those who uh, hurt us as well, and help us forgive those who hurt us. And God bless Raj, bless his finances, bless his family. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen, man.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Matt.
All right, Raj. All right, we'll talk to you, man.
Talk soon. Peace.
Later.